Hey guys, Mark Daniels Jr. I'm out here on a beautiful lake in Alabama, but I came to talk to you guys about one of my most recent events, which was on Lake St. Clair. Had an amazing finish, finished in 3rd place, caught a lot of big smallmouth that week, and I want to walk you guys through pretty much everything, where I caught them, how I caught them, the baits that I use, the whole 9. So without further ado, I'm gonna jump right into the baits, and then we'll get into some of the locations, areas on the lake where I was fishing, and then I'll talk to you guys about how I utilize my electronics to catch a few really key fish. So I'm gonna jump right into this thing, man. This right here was my bread and butter pretty much all week. I caught the bulk of the fish that I weighed that week on this setup right here. And this is a new rod from Kistler. This is their new cranking edition. It's called a fill-in reel. This is 7'2", medium heavy action. And what's really key to note on this setup is the reel that I was using. As you can see right here, that's a Cabela's Arachnid reel, okay? Key feature on this reel, this is an 8-to-1 gear ratio, which I know that's shocking. You never throw a crankbait generally on a high-speed reel like that, but what I found in that particular situation, those smallmouth wanted that bait moving very fast through the water column, and they would react on it, and boom, they had to have it. Cool story behind this crankbait right here. A good friend of mine and fellow Bassmaster Elite Series competitor, Clint Davis, gave me this lure. We were fishing a buddy tournament here in Alabama about 2 months ago, and we're fishing offshore and we're throwing these things around, catching some spotted bass. I had this crankbait tied on my rod for 2 months. It had been sitting in a rod locker, so when I got to St. Clair, first day of practice, I was digging around. I wanted to throw a deep diving crankbait. Well, I had this one already tied on. I said, I'm gonna fire this thing around a couple times just to see. And just so happened, they love this thing, man. I caught 2 4-pounders that day. Needless to say, I cut it off. I ran and found Clint on the water. I picked up a couple spares from him, and then we went fishing. And they just absolutely smashed this thing all week. 12-pound Seaguar Tatsu. Very key. The 12-pound line, in my opinion, allowed me to maximize the depth range on this bait. I was getting this bait down anywhere from 15 to about 18 feet. I also threw it on 10-pound test when I moved out a little deeper and I wanted to get the bait a little deeper. So sometimes you need to downsize the line to really optimize the action in the bait and definitely to maximize the depth on the bait. And that's just what I did with this setup right here. As I spoke about, I had this bait also in another color that worked for me that week. And here it is. This is more of just a basic shad. I think they call this color Gizzard Shad. Just a basic shad color. When the water was a little bit more dingy, I felt like the white stood out a little better. Or in an overcast situation, I would opt to go with this just because I felt like that white color popped a little better in that water clarity. I spent the majority of my time over on the far, I guess you would call it, northeast side of the lake, the Canadian side of the lake. Very popular area over there, the Bell River Hump. I was really close to that area. And what was key about that area was there was isolated patches of grass. I call it perch grass. I'm not really sure the true name of the grass, but anytime you would find these patches of grass next to a sandy, hard bottom, a clear area, you would always get bit, and it seemed to be smaller groups, never schooled up, but smaller groups of fish in these areas. And so obviously coming through with the crankbait, catching all the really active fish. But another key element was utilizing my Garmin Electronics. I'm running 7610s up front, and let me tell you something, on that 2D sonar, the definition is so crisp that I could always tell the difference between grass, fish, smallmouth, sturgeon, pike. I mean, there's so many different species out there. And what I would do is I would hurry up and reel that crankbait in fast as I could. Look down on my graph, I would see what I'll call gummy worms. I've been referencing that ever since I fished St. Clair. It looks like a big old gummy worm on your graph. And a lot of times, those are your 4 to 5 pound smallmouth. And so I'd hurry up, I'd reel my bait in, I'd reach over and I'd grab this drop shot and I would drop it straight down. And oftentimes I would catch that fish. And my setup on this drop shot is, this is probably my favorite spinning rod from Kistler. This is a 7-foot Kistler Helium 3 medium action, extremely versatile rod. I use this for most of my spinning applications. I'm throwing that on 15-pound Seaguar Smackdown mainline, and I'm using an 8-pound Seaguar Tatsu top shot. The bait of choice that week was an Erie Darter. This one happens to be the 3.5 inch. I also used the 4 inch. It didn't really seem to matter. They just were really keyed in on the gobies, and that mimics a goby. Awesome. I got a 1.0 Gamakatsu Aaron Martin's G Finesse hook, 3/8 ounce tungsten, a very basic setup as far as that goes. And like I said, anytime I would see that gummy worm pop up on that Garmin, I'd reel that thing right up, drop it straight down, and oftentimes I'd catch that fish. So that's really all I did that week. It was relatively basic. I spent the bulk of my time chucking and winding, covering water, you know, catching these random, you know, 4 to 5 pounders, man. It was really key. On day 3, I had 24 pounds. That's my biggest bag of smallmouth I've ever caught in my life. And that day, 3 of them came on the crankbaits, and I caught 2 giants on the drop shot that I seen on my Garmin. So always keep your eyes peeled when you're out there fishing open water. Electronics are so key, and you know, I can't thank Garmin enough for making such an awesome unit, and the clarity is so good that it was never a shadow of doubt in my mind. I would see him on the graph, I say, you know what, that's a smallmouth, I can tell. I'd reel it in, drop it straight down, and boom, I'd catch that bass. So I appreciate all you guys for checking me out, follow me on social media. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'm Mark Daniels Jr., and I'll see you guys at the next one.